it's a different venue today for us.
Really? I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, maybe the background didn't give it away. It's a gorgeous backdrop here of Tampa Bay.
Is the pirate ship right there?
Comes in through that.
It's right there, right?
Can't see my hand. Comes
It's
in
pretty
through there. Big old procession. I see a ship there.
Oh, pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, well, yeah. It's going to be a weird podcast because it's kind of a weird topic. The topic I wanted to talk about was all about ego and how it kind of messes up it messes up everything, but specifically agility. It messes up your agility organizational wide. But I was recently on a project, and the project had a lot of project managers, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you were in the same situation. The project had a lot of project managers, and they would just make odd requests, and it was pretty evident that they were fighting agility. But I was not on the project long enough to really delve into why, right? Because I would have had to couple with the leadership to start digging into the history of who was on the project and when, and what happened in history and that kind of stuff to figure out why they got that way. But maybe I don't know. Maybe there's some agile coach out there yelling into their TV screen. You don't need to figure out why. Just fix it. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's not important to figure out why. I want to know why they're like that, so I know what to avoid and what not to do. But yeah, I really got the feeling that these project managers were not only were they not allowing me to work in the way that any normal agile professional knows that you have to work, that they were interjecting to try to get me to do project manager type tasks, and it caused a lot of friction on the project. And I'm trying to form my statement into a question. Like that, I guess the question now would be, my question is more of a leadership question. So I don't know how much traction we're going to make on this subject, because my leadership question is, why would you allow that to fester in the middle of your organization? Yeah. Your project managers in the middle of your organization. They're not quite at a leadership level, but they're not at a low worker level. They're sort of in the middle manager type of position.
I think so let's talk about why project managers are there on these kinds of projects. Right? I think leadership seek out these personalities because traditionally, they associate project managers as people who go get things done.
Yeah.
And so in the old ways, they used to come in and say, what's the work? Oh, I'm going to break it down into chunks and give some to Mary and some to John and so on. And then I'm going to keep writing them and go, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Mm-hmm. That's the traditional way. Mm-hmm. If it isn't done, then you have somebody to point the finger to.
Yeah.
And in Agile, as a team of self-managing individuals, there is no finger pointing. Everyone collectively is accountable for the product or the product increment, right? Yeah. That is diametrically opposed to that model of project management. But the reason why leadership have them is because they feel like that's what they've always had. So they have one neck to choke, the project managers, by holding them accountable for dates and deliverables and milestones, So that kind of a viewpoint still persists, unfortunately, even today.
Yeah, but we did a whole episode about program management, and we did a whole thing of talking about program. How would you the PMO episode is actually one of our most downloaded episodes, believe it or not. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why either. But we did a whole thing on the PMOs and how would you structure your PMO, and how do things roll up from team up to the larger program level, and then above that. I don't, unless you're gonna take one of these old school project managers and convert them more to be in charge of a product line, which I mean, listen, I work with a lot of project managers through my career. Mm-hmm. The majority of project managers I work with are very smart people. They're quick, they learn quickly, they stay on top of things, they're not fooled easily. You know what I mean? They're detail oriented. They want to be in the details, stuff like that. Now, the command and control stuff, let's put that aside for a second. I'm just trying to highlight their positive benefits. Mm-hmm. Most of the project managers I've worked with/for, they could do the program management job. So is that not in I don't even know where I'm going with this point. Is that like, it's not a career progression because it's a completely different career? Maybe.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah.
But I don't know. At some point where you say, well, my company's going to adopt Agile and we're not going to work in these old command and control ways, at some point you have to cut over. Why are these people not cutting over?
The cutover. So I agree. You have to cut over, right? The cutover is not a step function. It's gradual, and that is essentially part and parcel of what we're calling agile transformation. They take time, and this is why they take time. There are so many facets to agile transformation, right? So what we're talking about is just one of those facets, and most companies don't have a viable approach that they can comfortably adopt for this. They think, having a project manager assign work to people and holding their feet to the fire on those things, which is the way they've always had project managers work, that's the way to go because it's comforting, right? We know this worked in the old ways, or did it, right? Yeah. That's the question. If it did, then why are you adopting agility? So they don't know any better. They grew up with that metaphor, that paradigm, right? They may have taken a course or two in some sort of agile area, maybe a Cal leadership course or something like that. Yeah. But at that point, their knowledge is largely academic. They haven't really practiced it themselves. So they don't know how to foster and steer that change within the organization. They feel like there's a risk element to that. Doing it that way, as the leader who is doing it that way among their peers, they feel like that's a risky way to go when everybody else is still doing it the old-fashioned way. So they're going to fall in line, right? That's what I've seen happen. So to that end, what they'll do is they'll recruit people that are like-minded. They'll recruit people that are non-agile in their ways of thinking and their ways of attacking work, which is why you end up with these PMs on the job. Yeah,
but now you have a problem that leadership can only solve, because now they're carving out pieces of the organization that are throwbacks. You know what I mean? Instead of one or two people that are air quotes old school, that person's just that person. Don't worry about them. They have an old school way of doing things. You know what I mean? You have one effective person that don't worry about them. Instead of that, now you have entire pieces of your organization that are conflict. So now at the point where you've kind of like, you've given an inch and they've taken a mile, and now you have to deal with that. Now leadership has to step in and deal with a more complicated problem. Whereas if it was just one person, they could just coach that one person or train that one person or have some one-on-one sessions with that one person, reviews the one person. Hey, this is what leadership wants. We want the company to embrace Agile. We want to be at the forefront. We want to be practicing all the best practices and have our people train and all that kind of stuff. We don't want this conflict to be happening that's constantly sabotaging our projects, because we say we're Agile. We say we want to be able to pivot and change direction, but the people we've placed in place are actively fighting what the leadership wants.
They are, and they're also relaying the message up to leadership that Agile doesn't work here. It's not for us. Yeah. So on the way, what they're doing is they're bastardizing Agile by adopting these practices that are essentially non-Agile, right? So they call these practices with Agile labels. We're doing stand-ups, we're doing, retrospectives, etc. So they use those labels, but what they're in fact practicing in real life, right? In practice, is not that. It's the old way of doing things. So do exactly what they did before. Just give it a new name, and then come back and say, "See, Agile doesn't work for us."
Yeah. I mean, you could do that again. This you now have a leadership problem though, because. If you're saying this could apply to any like I know we're applying it to, I promise I'm going to make a point here in a second. I understand we're applying it to project managers who've been relabeled into some sort of Agile space or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but this could apply to anything. This could apply to a sales guy that doesn't want to sell to a certain specific company, so he just undermines all the sales. But that stuff should show in the numbers. There should be data that backs up that this person is not performing well in their role. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, the reason I bring this up, you should be able to look at the data, right? The reason I bring this up is because in larger organizations that I've been part of, well, that might not be true. It might maybe in because this has happened in smaller organizations, people under 100 people as well, which is they go to the project manager and ask, hey, how come your project is behind? And then the project manager says, well, these darn developers are super slow in delivering. They can't get me anything. Or whenever they get me stuff, it's buggy. And then they basically take that person at their word, without any kind of inspection or adaptation of the project manager's work.
Yes.
Very rarely, I say very rarely to push off the conflict, the accusatory, my normal accusatory nature. I push off and say rarely. I don't think I've ever seen a project manager's challenge to say those dates that you gave in your original plan. How do I know any of those dates are real? Now I've seen them get challenged from the team and from people who are in the hierarchy below them.
Yes.
I've never seen someone in leadership tear apart a Gantt chart and be like, all those dates that you got, how do I know that those are real?
Yeah, you're right. In practice, that is an astute observation. I've not seen that either. I think part of it is that, there's this resolve on the part of the project managers to make it work, right? The way they think it should work. So they're not going to let go. And what they're going to do is they're going to try and sugarcoat some of this stuff. Essentially, what I'm saying is everything boils down to this, right? So people are just saying it's not my fault, right?
That's the thing that blows my mind is how they get so much leeway. You don't give a Scrum Master that much leeway. You don't give a product owner that much leeway. No, nobody in the Scrum model, or even in a Kanban model, if your flow rate is real slow or starts slowing down, you notice the trend of it slowing down, and then you call them to, hey, why is your team slowing down? I want some, what happened? What happened? I get the easiest example for me in this one is when you keep metrics for a team, you keep the velocity. A lot of Scrum Masters do this. Actually, a lot of whatever's over Scrum Master programs,
program managers.
Yeah, a lot of programs do this. They track the velocity metrics of the team over a period of time. I remember a team that I was with. I was with the team for, I think, 6 months or something like that. So that's 12 sprints. They were 2-week sprints. And I had 10 sprints in a chart to show their velocity as like a line chart over time. And when it dipped, I would have to go in and I would make notes. Every sprint, I make notes of what was happening in the organization.
So you're trying to get some correlation, right?
Yeah. Because I knew, because anybody could see our metrics. Anybody could see our metrics because I was all about transparency in that position. And I wanted to get ready to defend myself in case anyone asked, well, what's the reason for this dip? But in actuality, I don't know if that was even the right thing to do. What does it matter if the velocity dipped for a sprint or two?
It doesn't in the long run, right? As long as people understand that variation is normal.
It doesn't even, if you think about it, does it even matter in the short run? It could be something as easy as, well, that sprint, the work we took on was a lot more complicated and bigger in story size, and we couldn't split it.
So those things you just mentioned resonate with an agilist. They don't resonate with project management and above, because they're looking at productivity, utilization. Right. These are measures that they're looking to satisfy.
You know the other thing that I constantly get whenever I get this question, it automatically is a red flag in my brain that the person I'm dealing with is a project manager in disguise. Because I've gotten this from other Scrum Masters, and I've gotten this from program managers before, and I've gotten this from some product owners, not very many, but some product owners who were, when you dug into their background, they were project managers in other positions, and then they were now a product. They got relabeled as a product owner somehow. They'll ask me how can we properly do capacity planning? They'll ask me. And when I dig into, well, what does capacity planning mean to you? Well, we need to know how many hours each person is working per day, and that we have enough hours and people to fill whatever.
Utilization.
Right. Yeah. Utilization. That's what they really mean. Yeah. And I usually will stop them at that point to say, I don't care about any of that.
Right.
Right. Why would I do that? I'm not worried about getting 6.5 hours out of each developer every single day. And if I don't, I need to find out where they were during that. Like, I don't want to do that. Nobody wants to work in an environment like that.
No.
And why would you be tracking that? What use is that metric to you?
Yeah, those are great questions. I agree with you. But I think if you're a project manager, you've been used to having utilization on your view in Microsoft Project or whatever tool you're using.
Yeah.
And you're making sure that you're not loading people up to more than 100% because
Right.
they're then overloaded. Well, we know that you can't even load people to 100%, right?
No.
But that concept of not loading them doesn't exist. It could, but it doesn't. It's just the way of thinking. So people are tracking utilization rates for their team members, right? And then the other side of it is, they're being given work packages in project management. So you give somebody a work package and go, you're going to do this. And not only that, you're going to do this by this date because it says so on my Gantt chart.
Yeah.
So if you're a developer or if you're a team member, tester, you're being told what to do. You're being told when to do it by, right? By somebody who, A, has probably never done it,
Right.
and B, doesn't really know what it takes to get it done.
Yeah, that would be the big problem right
Oh, how can this ever succeed? Which is why, those projects never hit the intended milestones.
there. Yeah, but the problem when you have delays like that is usually from what I've seen, I'm making another broad generalization, but usually it's the original date that was picked out of the air without consulting anyone that is at fault. But then the person who does it's like arguing for a used car. It's like the person who throws out the first number always loses. That mentality, which I don't agree with, but it's that mentality. It's as long as I gave the original date, I set the bar that everyone has to follow, and then if we don't hit that date, then everybody who is not me has failed me, even though I just made that date up. I didn't consult anybody about it.
Right.
But I don't understand how that. I don't understand how that is still allowed. Old school project management or agile shop, it doesn't really matter. I don't understand how whoever came up with the dates is basically unchallenged to whatever dates that they came up with.
It's weird, isn't it?
It
when you
is
think
very
about
strange if you think about it.
Yeah, it's very strange that someone who's not accountable for the work can pick a date and still not wear the consequences of missing the date.
Well, let me try to take this side. There's some project managers screaming at their screen right now. What the arguing point that they will say is, well, I asked you if that date was okay, and you said yes. Which well, let me pause you for a second, and you can please put me on blast on the internet, because usually what happens is, I especially see this with my Indian team members. They'll say, "Can you get this done by August 15th?" What are you going to say? No. You're not going to say no. Oh yeah, I can get it done. Okay, yes. Whatever. It doesn't matter what question you asked. Can you somehow find a way to get to the moon by August 15th? Oh yeah. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's really management by threat, and that doesn't work because there's of course an implied threat here. If you say no, either you'll do it or your successor will.
Yeah, right.
So they're not gonna say no. There's a lot to unpack there. So if you're one of those team members from offshore, you're probably working for one of these vendors that put in bodies, basically a body shop, right? But you've actually got a pretty decent job for yourself, right? You're over there, you're getting paid a decent wage for the country that you're in, plus all the benefits and everything else that goes with it. So you don't want to upset that, because your lifestyle gets geared up to that, right? And by saying no, you're undermining all of that. So you're not going to say no. What you're going to do instead is you're going to make sure you try your best to hit that date that you had no idea whether it's attainable or not.
Yeah.
So you're getting pulled in both directions, right? Burning the candle at each end, trying to make it happen.
Well, in my experience, that's exactly what they'll do. Is they'll be working weekends, they'll be working nights, and they'll be working for not extra pay, they'll just be working extra to get whatever is accomplished. That's the way and they'll just eat whatever frustration or whatever it is, because I don't know what their situation in life is, or whether they're scared to get fired, or whether
there is that, plus there's cutthroat competition for these roles over there. So they want to make sure that once they land a position, they don't let go of it.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Well, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I don't understand at all what the guys, I don't understand at all. Let me finish the thought I was on, and let me pivot to where my mind is going. I don't understand at all some of these guys that I've worked with out of India. I don't understand what position they're in their company, Whereas if they're not on a contract, they're going to get canned immediately. You know what I mean? So if they're scared to get fired off of that contract, maybe like TCS or whatever company they work for, etc. I don't know what company they work for. Maybe whatever company they work for, if they get kicked off the contract, they'll get kicked out of that company. You know what I mean? And then that's the main employer in their area, so it'll be very difficult to find. I don't know what the situation is. I'm sure it could be that, but a situation that I was exposed to when I was a hiring manager was we used a company out of it was either Ukraine or Belarus. I can't remember where it was. It was a non-EU country, that's all I remember. But we use a company out of Ukraine or Belarus, and all the developers they worked and lived at some kind of compound. They worked and lived at a compound, and whenever you had to get somebody, because I remember some of the guys that worked with us work a swing shift type of, so they could work later into their day. They work, 10, 11 a.m. until 8 p.m. And sometimes we would need somebody to talk through a technical issue, and then they'd get on the morning call. They'd be like, okay, hang on, let me go get him, he's sleeping. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What kind of slave labor shop are you guys running over there? And number one, and number two, like, who started giving these people money from? Did you not ask about what's happening? Hang on, let me go get him. He's sleeping? Yeah. To go get him in a room? What kind of place is this that we're in business with, man?
It's not uncommon, sadly. I know that that's definitely the case in China, in many large companies, where so the labor force isn't in the city necessarily.
Yeah, Om, you just got us banned in China.
Okay. Let me just get rid of everything that's Chinese on me. I'll be right back. Yeah, so the labor force comes in from the countryside, right? So they come to the city, which is expensive for them.
Right.
So the employer puts on accommodation, etc. I've seen pictures of offices where, like you said, they work there and they sleep there, and I've seen their little sleeping bags right between the desks where they sleep. Yeah. Not sure if I'd like that. But anyway, where were we going with this?
I don't know where we were going with it. I remember constantly fighting my manager because it was a constant point of contention, because he's like, oh, these guys are great. They're always available, and they're cheap. They weren't. Actually, I don't think they were cheaper than hiring somebody in the office. Actually, now I think about it, but he's like, oh, we can hire them on. It was for him in that position I'm talking about. Oh boy, I'm really not good at making points today. It had to do with the capex versus opex budget. Right. So you could hire contractors because there was budget for contracted money because it was capitalized. Wow, we're back to finance.
We are indeed.
My favorite topic. And he would constantly be pushing me to say, well, hell, they got talent. They keep telling me, their business development guy tells me they got 2, 3, whatever QA people they're ready to do right now. And I'm like, I don't like, dude, they're working a sweatshop, man. I don't want my hands in that. I don't want any part of that. Oh, Brian, you got to think what's best for the business and blah blah blah. And I'm no, I don't. I can get brand new people I can get people out of college here who are trying to get their first job and I could teach them to do what because when you're in software development and you're sending stuff offshore, oh boy, this is going to be a broad generalization right now. Stick with me on this one and we'll get past this generalization. So this was testing. So it was a little different than development work. Development work doesn't have the same challenge. But when you have testing work that needs to be done, any tester that you need to bring on who does not have domain experience. So if you're dealing with banking software and you're bringing on a tester who doesn't know anything about banking software, you have to make sure you have test scripts and test cases, whatever, that are written in detail. Go to this page, then click on this button, then click on this button, then add $1,000 to your account, and then hit the save button. Now go back and verify that it actually was saved on the screen. Now go to the database and make sure you have an audit trail, and go here. So you have to have a fairly mature they would call it test documentation back in the day, or now it's all kept in the ALM tool, whatever it is. It's all, test scripts are rolled under test suites, and test suites are exercised based on whatever you're changing. Yeah, it's all in the tool. Well, if you don't have all that stuff automated, then someone's got to manually test all that stuff. Well, that was my thing. At the organization that I was at where we did this, we had some stuff automated, but a lot of stuff we did not. The older suite of software we did not have automated, and there wasn't any money in automating it because that was a point where I was like a little mini product owner at that organization, and we'll give you money to do automation, but you got to choose which product to put it into, and you can pick any product you want as long as it's not this product or this product. I was like, well,
Those are the ones that need the automation most. But if they're older products and they're kind of end of shelf life,
that's what it was. They were older. I completely I only bring it up, because it's funny to say it that way. But sometimes when you're a product owner, you deal with, hey, you can make any decision you want as long as it's not this decision or that decision. I'm like, well, okay. But yeah, no, I mean, it made sense. They were older products. They were a lot more mature. They had known bugs, but it was like, we know about them. Don't worry about them. And they rarely got changes. When they did, it was the A team making the changes. So the changes were, pretty rock solid most of the time. But yeah, I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to have my hands in what was going on, because it was a very weird situation. But to bring us back to where we were talking about non agility people in agility roles or businesses who are actively undermining, or even if they're not consciously actively undermining the company's ability to move fully to agility, or to fully embrace agility, or to move to the next milestone, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? To get better at it, to improve their agility. If I was leadership at that company, what are the signs? Are there metrics I should be looking for to know that our agility is not moving forward? Number one, are there things I can look at to know that our agility is not moving forward? Number one. More importantly, number two, how can I trace that back to one person who's sabotaging it? Is that even possible?
Well, great question. So I think if you're in leadership and you're looking for, any signs of whether agility or the progress to agility is rocky, it's bumpy, it's very difficult to see that from the metrics, because what you're being presented are veiled metrics.
Yeah.
You're not on the shop floor. You don't really see what's going on. You only see filtered views that are filtered from other views that are filtered. So when you're looking at that, at the end of the day, it boils down to this: am I getting my money's worth on the project? And this is going to come across the wrong way.
Oh, I like it.
Right? But maybe I do mean it. I was going to say I don't mean it that way, but maybe I do. So, oftentimes, leadership are looking for the end result and not how you get there. So they like to say, yes, we're going agile, we're embracing agile, etc. They'll say as much in town hall meetings, in any kind of meetings, the way they're promoting the company. They'll say that because their competitors are doing the same thing. So they, of course, can't be seen to be left behind. But internally within the company, it's like, I want this by this time. I don't care how what it takes for you to get there. Go get it done, right? So those people that are right below that level, senior leaders still, directors and managing directors, etc. What are they going to do? Are they going to push back and say, we can't do that, it's not agile, right? Or we're going to follow it in an agile way and see where we end up with the budget we have, and we'll flex on scope? They're not going to do that. What they're going to do is they're going to say, well, our necks are on the line, right? So essentially, crap rolls downhill, and that's what happens. So they're going to press down upon those that are, the senior managers and the likes in the company, and on and on it goes.
Yeah, but there's an assumption there that the company's culture is combative, and the culture is backstabby, and it
doesn't have to be overtly that way.
Yeah, but if you embrace agility, you should know that when you ask for something, they say, "Hey, I need this by." Even in agile projects, you can set a hard date and say, "I need something by this date," and then an experienced product owner who's backed up by an experienced scrum master will know, we'll take it back to our team. We can do an ad hoc backlog refinement, ad hoc, no problem. Maybe if it's important enough, we can stop what we're doing in the sprint, or bring it into the current sprint and start doing pieces of it if it truly is that important. There's the framework has ways to do these things. They shouldn't be like. That's the critique all the time in agility, which is an unfair critique, which is there are ways to do these things.
No doubt. Absolutely. No doubt. It's not all or nothing, right? I think what I'm saying is the mentality of those that grew up in the old way, it really isn't flexible enough to think about, how agile could help them. Yeah. That's the issue, I think. The middle managers and above, those guys are at a point in their career where if you look back, they never worked in an agile way, because agile was reasonably new, right? So if you're a middle manager, you're at a point where, you don't know Agile, but you know the way you've always known.
I mean, reasonably new, 20 years old, though. I mean,
But you didn't get to where you are, by practicing hands-on, right? Maybe you did early on, and then you weren't really doing Agile then.
I don't
so
know. This is when I started when I started today. This is the thread I wanted to pull on to get to, which is what you just described is like, well, I don't know, I don't know about this Agile stuff. I don't know. I've been working on successful projects for years. I don't know about this Agile stuff that's 20 years. I mean, 20 years old is more than most people's careers, but I'll take that off the table for a second. That was my you don't really have an excuse kind of. Let me take that off the table for a second.
Right.
I feel like if I keep pulling on this thread with any one of these individuals that we're using, these fictitious, possibly people that we keep using as examples, ego is going to be behind it.
There is no doubt that ego is embedded in here, right? Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, that's a big problem. Like that. So that's a big problem to me. So I recently interfaced with a company and I was told, the company's great and we're agile and we use Scrum and we have 2-week iterations and we're all on board. We got product owners and they're supported by product managers above them because we have a couple teams that we're scaled. And I was talking to them and then they broke out on me the line, "We don't have Scrum Masters. Like we tried that here and it doesn't work."
So they're actually doing Scrum, but they don't have Scrum Masters.
Correct.
Nice.
Correct. They say that job can be filled by our technical leads.
Awesome. So yeah, this is kind of like having a circus but no clowns, right? That job can be filled by other people. I don't know how that works.
I suspect we could ask a bunch of questions. And of this theoretical example, this theoretical non-actual example, that's totally an example. But again, I feel we're going to go back to one person in the company who decides how the teams are made up and decides who's on what teams and who can reform teams at the snap of their fingers. It's going to be one person, and it's going to go back to the ego of that one person.
Undoubtedly so. Undoubtedly so. Now remember, that person is among peers, right? So they're also competing.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to take the risk of failure by adopting Agile when their peers are not necessarily, or not at the same rate maybe. So there's some of that risk avoidance there. And then there's the flip side of that as well, which is, I know what I know, right? I know it works, kind of, and so I'm going to keep doing it that way. I have a hammer and I'm going to keep hammering away.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those situations where every problem looks like a nail, and it doesn't matter,
This is why I'm of the opinion that layer of the organization needs to just go away completely. It needs to be flattened where you have the owner and you have the teams, and the owner can work with the teams. You might have a product owner that has 1 or 2 teams that they work with, and that's it. But none of these intermediaries that are basically, spreadsheet managers. You don't need that.
And that works in a smaller organization, or small-ish organization. But once the organization takes on size and scaling, everything goes to hell.
Yeah, true.
Everything goes out the window. Because then you have middle managers make a career out of status updates, basically.
Right. Right.
Which I still can't believe. I can't believe somebody has a full-time job based on just walking to one person and be like, "Hey, when can you get that done? Hey, when can you get that status to me? Hey, can you do it by August 1st or whatever?" Like, August 1st is tomorrow. Yeah, but you had a month to figure out blah, 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 blah. Can you do it by this one day? Well, you better figure it out because I already told people you could do it that way. This stuff is 100% real. People are like, "Oh, Brian, you're so sassy." But like, no, this has happened to me a bunch of times, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I already told the leadership team the date, so you got to figure it out. You're going to need a good reason if you're going to come back and revisit the date. No, I don't need any good reason at all.
You told him?
Yeah,
you
need to march back in there and tell him you told him a bad date.
Right.
And throw yourself on a sword. But for some reason, this holy position is not to be questioned.
Yeah. Well, they're leadership's favorite person, really, because they give them dates, and when the dates don't materialize, then this person gets to point to someone else to take the blame. The teams, they're not working hard enough, smart enough.
Is it because they're the one person that tells leadership what they want to hear?
Oh, largely. Absolutely. This is why they don't say we can't do it by August 1st.
Doesn't that just go directly back to being an ego thing and elevated at a different level? Now it's a leadership ego thing, which should be the first rule of leadership, which is it's not about you anymore.
Right.
Actually, it's totally not about, and you have a huge problem at that point.
I've met too many leaders like that, though.
But all those people have problems that now. Yeah, I guess we've come to the end of this conversation because now this is an unsolvable problem. This is the type of problem where if you bring it up at community events, they'll be, change your company or change your company. I'll be like, thanks, dude. Thanks for not helping me at all.
I mean, there's no easy answer. I think the only thing is, if you have a team that's working well and you have somebody who has the aptitude to become a leader at that level, promote up from there. Don't just go get people that have not done this in an agile way for any length of time, for real, not just say they have. That's our only hope, but that's not a quick fix.
I want to say we should sit down and come up with a package of metrics for leadership that lets them understand if their agile implementation is on track and effective. I don't know what those. I mean, I can think of some metrics right off the top of my head. I can think of what they are, but they are things that I'm certain companies not measuring right now. Story flow rate, for example, like the hashtags no estimates that we were talking about last time. That I was sounding like a crazy person last time. I'd like to see story flow rate. I'd like to see the satisfaction of your team. The little happiness matrix of your team. I'd like to see that for every team, sprint over sprint. How happy are these teams? I'd like to see the backlog health. Just judges. Just metric. I don't know exactly how to represent it. I'd like to see how much work comes in at the last minute. I'd like to see the percentage of. I'd like to see the percentage breakdown of what is. I'm gonna screw this up. I screw this up every time. I'd like to see the percentage breakdown of what is feature development versus technical runway architectural development versus bug fixes. Just break fixes type stuff.
A lot of the feature development work should roll up to. A lot of the technical development work should roll up to some sort of business value in the feature side of things.
I would expect it to be on your roadmap with features, but VSTS has a drop down built in. It says business or architectural. I think it only has two. That's the built in one. It says business and architectural. Those are the only two things it says. And nobody, I don't think I've ever worked somewhere where it actually uses those two, but they're super valuable. Even if you can say. Even if you had a very well functioning, companies do this a lot of times, which is this is an anti-pattern to do this, but what they do is they take the architectural work. An environment needs to be built. We need to expand the storage for a database. We need to add memory to whatever machines, and they don't handle that as part of their normal roadmap items that their team takes care of. They usually have some tech lead or with a Kanban board, actually, that's not even true. They usually have some tech lead who's working all hours of the weekend and night, who's just reporting their status and working in a silo by themselves and not reporting anything to anybody, not telling them when they're changing anything.
Right.
And they're working 50, 60, 70 hours doing those kind of things, supporting their teams, but that stuff's not baked into a roadmap. That's the normal way I've seen people do it. Now, that stuff should be baked into a roadmap. Okay, and it should be funneled in, and then those items that are in support of, add more memory because we need to support X number of concurrent users.
Exactly.
Add more whatever, changing out load balancers or something like that because we want to, make the site resolve in whatever time, whatever it is. That stuff should be on the roadmap. Maybe it takes the teams, maybe it doesn't take the teams, but it should be in the normal roadmap. It
should absolutely be there, and it should provide some sort of business value to, as I was saying, right? So, we're adding more memory or adding more CPU, right? But the technical folks don't think about it that way. I think oftentimes it falls on the product owner to say, hey, what's that story? That I know it says architecture, but what is it? And then formulate, that story in a way that says, this is the business value of doing that activity.
Yeah, but if you're gonna claim to truly have a cross-functional team, this gets brushed over in normal agility. If you're truly gonna claim to have a cross-functional team, You need to have a guy who can handle your compute on that team, a guy who can handle your server farm or your switching or whatever. Why not pass that information to your developers and have your, this is the core purpose of DevOps. Your developers kind of and your operations kind of are one and the same. They kind of move things along.
But I haven't seen that anywhere where you can have exactly all of those little pieces, right, that you need on the team. So
well, you might. I mean, maybe you share because usually you have an army of developers and you have an army of one operations guy,
right?
Because networking used to be a big thing in the late '90s, and then somewhere along the line, people started devaluing the network guys. They were like, "Oh, those guys just sit in the corner, and they're over there." I don't know when that happened, but.
There's other areas where this is true as well. Getting architects. You don't have an architect on every team, and so on and so forth.
You don't need those people on every team.
No, you don't.
But you do need to account for their work. This is the roadmap. I worked at a client one time where they were a big AWS customer, so they didn't need to worry about server management and stuff like that because AWS just handles all that stuff for you, which is fantastic. Yeah. It's fantastic from the perspective of you don't need to maintain a big server farm and deal with my DNS servers, blah blah blah. AWS just handles it. The trade-off of that is you just write AWS a fat check every month, and then you're married to them forever, basically. But he used to do a bunch of stuff like that. He would say, "Oh well, our bandwidth is starting to get a little tight. Our CPU is starting to get a little tight on the database. We're at, we spiked to 80% X number of times in the month. I think it's about time to move to the next tier of CPU from AWS, and it's going to cost this much." And he would make he'd sort of have like a P&L type of sheet for the infrastructure.
Right.
But all those items were on the roadmap. They were feature level items on the roadmap, meaning we never really, the individual development teams didn't really care about taking the feature and breaking it into stories where
right.
One person does it. We're just going to trust that he's working on it. And when we have a meeting, when we have the scaled meeting, he'll basically be representing a team, but it's just him.
Yeah.
Representing a team of himself doing operations style tasks. And sometimes he needed to pull developers in to help him.
Sure.
Like especially when he was migrating servers over, he needed to pull developers, or sometimes he pulled a tester in to say, "Hey, I'm going to copy your server, increase the storage on the server or the compute on the server, and then spin it up, and I just need you to log on at whatever 2 a.m, whenever we do it, and
do a smoke test.
Yeah, do a quick test and make sure everything recovered, and and we coordinate, but we all plan together. He was in the room. Sometimes he wasn't if he knew that he didn't have anything, but he was always invited to the planning events when we did the planning, and we were real tight, but we only had a couple teams, 4 or 5 teams at the most, so it wasn't a huge event.
Right.
But he was always invited to the planning event, not always required, but always. I don't know why I got on that side tangent. Probably to say your technical tasks, most people push that stuff away from the Scrum teams. My point is it needs to be part of especially if you're in a project management mentality. You'll say, well, this swim lane on the Gantt chart is these other guys, and this part of the Gantt chart is these guys, and they don't need to see each other's work. I'll keep them separate so it's less confusing. We got to have less meetings, right? Less meetings means more efficient. Well, actually, no, because you're all doing the same. You all are using the same pool of people.
Right.
And
right.
So maybe not. Also, how tight do you need to silo people in the name of efficiency?
What you're losing there is that coordination and communication, right?
I don't know. I mean, the I'm trying to think of what the counter. While I bring all this up, while I rant, I'm trying to think of what the counterpoint to all this would be.
I'd be interested in hearing a couple of those in these cases, though.
Well,
I mean, the counterpoint is it's just the easiest thing to do, right? It's easier because the technical folks are doing the technical work. Well, why does it have to be on the roadmap? Yeah, Priyo doesn't understand that stuff anyway because she's not technical, right? Yeah. That's the counterpoint, I think.
Yeah. Well, another counterpoint that I think of. I keep my eye on the time. Another counterpoint that I can think of that people bring up, that people have brought up that I remember, has been, well, we don't want a developer in the planning for whatever because the person who gets paid to do that costs less than a developer. I can't think of a specific example right now.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I know like a capacity planning. We don't want to. I think about this for the swarming specific. For example, when the testers are writing their test cases, well, I don't want to have the sprint planning. I don't want to have the developers in the test case development part of the sprint planning, because they're wasting their, because the developers shouldn't be writing tests because the QA people get paid less than them. We're tying up 3 developers to sit there while the QA guy writes his tasks. I'm not explaining exactly.
No,
right,
I get exactly what you mean. I've seen that pushback on pair programming, right? Mob programming.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Pair programming is a great example of that. Is why do I don't want to pay, if I'm paying a developer $120 an hour, $140 an hour, $200 an hour, whatever it is. I've seen consulting developers get paid way more than that. I don't want to have 2 people doing the work of 1 person because I'm paying this much money.
Yeah, I mean, the counter to that is, how much money do you want to waste on the bug fixes later on that miss, because you've now got 2 pairs of eyes on the code and they're actually communicating, right? Yeah. So the code quality that results from there is much higher.
Yeah.
The downside there is no easy way for you to back that up with metrics and say, this is why we can justify it. But
the only way for you to back that up with metrics would be to have a team that pair programs and a team that doesn't pair program.
Yeah, you could do analogous kind of comparison.
And then compare the number of bugs that are being generated. But the issue with that, again, is you really need to go to, this is where I think the spot that we're in the current state of the business, it's too easy to make emotional pleas, or we were talking about last episode of the confirmation bias of this one team didn't generate any bugs, so no team ever in existence ever should generate bugs.
Yeah.
That's not really the way that works. You can't really compare the 2 teams. This is a staple of Scrum. You can't compare 2 teams. You should never even try to compare 2 teams.
Yeah.
But people do it all the time.
They do. I know.
Yeah,
I know. That's crazy, but again, the people that do that don't really understand, the basis of Scrum, that it's made up of individuals and we're all unique.
Yeah.
Right? We're not all robots.
I had somewhere that I was going with that, but I forgot. I forgot.
Yeah, definitely egos come into it. That's where I think we were before we kind of went down some rabbit holes.
So two things for us to take away out of this one, because I'm gonna cut this one off for right now. 2 things to take away. Number 1, we really need to, maybe we'll do it, maybe we'll take a whole episode and do this, think about it. Maybe we'll do a little prep beforehand and see if we can figure out how to do it. I'd like to come up with a package of metrics that executives should be asking for their, not only their teams, but the program, to provide. Because one of the things I didn't mention is business value. I specifically did not mention business value because I want to think about that one, because I think out of all the projects and all the companies I've ever been at, I cannot remember one that kept business value in the story level in their tool.
Right. We just did that incidentally on one of the large global programs I was on.
Yeah.
We used business, but the downside, so there was up and downsides. The upside was the team was very small.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of churn. So every sprint we were going back to forming, right? And with only a couple of developers, we were actually knocking it out of the park. We're doing very well.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about just like velocity. I'm talking about how many bugs were found after escape defects. We were doing really well. And we were using, so coming back to business value, we were using business value ascribed by the product owner on every user story in the LM tool.
Yeah.
And instead of focusing on the story point based velocity or anything like that, we would focus only on the business value.
Yeah.
And I did the simple thing of, here are the features. Tell us what they're worth to you, right? So the next column, just assign business value 1 to 10 or whatever it is. And then at the end of the sprint, go, okay, now here's the 3rd column. Go ahead and assign the business value you think you received for each of those, right? And then do the easy compute and go, if the overall business value for the sprint was less than 90%, I need to think through why, right? What is going on? What are some of the causal factors? And there was only one time when that happened in multiple sprints over 6 months. And it was because of the fact that some of the time during the sprint was usurped by a production support issue.
Yeah.
So we didn't make it. But the PO understood, right?
Yeah.
But just pure math didn't work out well for us. The thing that didn't work, though, is I mentioned it was a global program, multiple team, but only one team, ours, was using business value. So you can't really compare across the train, I feel like.
Yeah. So you don't want to. I gotta keep it on time because we only got like 3 minutes.
Sure.
That's why I'd like us to this will be our homework. We gotta take this away, come up with a standard package, and because that package is now got to be, the leadership has to ask program to say, hey, I want every team to provide these metrics, but You don't want to start comparing across teams, but you do want to start compiling things like this.
Yeah.
So I have a few in my brain. I want to I don't want to dig into it more here because we're at time. 45 minutes. The other thing is I think the Toyota kata questions are probably easy to do this, but the other thing I want to do is come up with a series of questions to start asking these anti-agility people, or agility in disguise, or whatever, project management in disguise of agility, to get to the ego, or to enough questions to get them to kind of reveal that ego is the source of the problem. I'm not sure if that's something that you can standardize. That might be so custom, it's got to be per person.
It's contextual largely, but I love the fact that we're going to talk about those metrics, because it's hard to get it's amorphous, right? It's hard to get our heads around that, so it'll be great. Look forward to that one.
All right. Well, we'll have to do some homework and get back to that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, in the meantime, comment if we miss anything or if we're, frustrated anyone.
Let us know about the topics you're interested in.
That is true.
Down below.
Also, agilepodcastquestions@gmail.com.
Be safe, everyone.
And pirate ship. It's over there.